Hi, everyone. Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on the start of your Friday morning. Good morning. Glad you're with us for Second Cup. Okay, so Katie and Aaron are both off this morning, so we have Adam and Autumn in with us. Look, we want to make sure that you're also in the know this morning and are able to ask any questions about what's ahead on Saturday. So a couple of things we want to dig into this morning, and you can throw your comments here in the comment section. Number one, we're talking about the weather. Number two, we're also going to be talking about last night's debate. What did you make of the candidates? What did you make of Donald Trump? What did you make of Joe Biden, President Biden? And what do you think this will mean for the future and the November election? Then if we have time and we're going to get to it, we're going to talk about dating apps and how many people are turning their backs on the dating scene on these apps and trying to do it in person. But first, throw your comments in. We'll get to all of them in just a moment. I want to make sure we're getting to Autumn Lewandowski, who's got a look at some storms that are possibly rolling through Western New York tomorrow.
Right. So sorry to be looking at my computer while you were speaking.
Hey, please.
Trying to get everything up online to make sure that people can see it there as well. Can we look at weather graphics and stuff? Okay. So there's a severe weather threat for the day on Saturday. So this is all of Western New York. There's a slight risk across the area. So this means there's a 15% chance that we can have severe weather, strong winds being primary threat, some hail, and even a very low risk to have tornadic activity in the area. Now, a lot of times you'll see wording of non-zero because it's just a 2% shot across Western New York, but we actually don't really even get that very often. The southern tier more or less has that 2% risk. Now, the southern tier tomorrow will have a 5% risk for tornadic activity. So this is how we're going to move through the day. It's going to end up with morning rain that can potentially turn severe as we head into the afternoon. And I'm just going to go and move this graphic myself because the clicker doesn't want to work.
It's Friday.
That's what happens.
The Friday, or those clickers already taken off.
So let me show you what is going on with it. So early tomorrow morning, we're going to have a warm front that goes across the area. Now, as that goes through, this has heavy torrential rains and it's moving into a very moist environment. So what will end up happening, the stronger winds that come along with kind of the upper atmosphere with this warm front may turn severe. So we could have 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts within that. And there's even a slight chance for a brief tornado early in the morning. That's for the southern tier. Then into the afternoon, we have the cold front that passes by. And you have to think of the atmosphere as in the terms of maybe a cylinder that goes straight up in the atmosphere. So you'll get wind shear. And when you get wind shear, you get winds that are moving away from each other, but there's also turning that happens. So when the turn happens, that's when you can get rotation. So that's the non-zero chance for a brief tornado into tomorrow afternoon. So I would suggest anyone that was thinking about outdoor plans to have them indoors and be very weather aware. You don't have to be worried about this. Just know that, you shouldn't have your patio furniture out in harm's way tomorrow.
Melly wondering, any rain chance for Sunday early afternoon?
There's a spotty shower early in the day. I think by the time we get between noon and 2, we're drying out a lot. But it's going to be breezy, maybe 15, 20-mile-an-hour winds, and will be in the lower 70s. So it's a different environment than the 80s and beautiful sunshine today.
Okay. Well, bottom line here, we're looking at the threat of severe weather tomorrow. So just be weather aware. Yesterday, Mary Beth called it a washout for Saturday. Do we still think the same thing for tomorrow?
I think if we get some dry time in the middle of the day, that gives you a better chance for stronger storms in the afternoon. So you would rather have it just be a washout where the environment doesn't get a chance to get warm again and kind of re-energize, if that makes sense. So we're just going to have to see if there's going to end up being kind of a little bit of a dry slot that would potentially allow those stronger storms.
And Sherry wondering, any thoughts about Darien Lake on Saturday for a company picnic? Yeah.
Bad news.
Yeah, I mean,
She doesn't want to be the bearer of bad news. She does not want to say it.
I mean, it just doesn't look great. I mean, later in the day, if that front comes by earlier in the afternoon, I mean, you got the second half of the late afternoon and evening north, because north ends up being a little bit better than the southern tier, or say almost 20 southward, or maybe the 90 southward. But it's just not going to be a great day.
Okay, so we'll continue tracking this for you throughout the day, both on air and online. Make sure you're downloading our WKBW app. It's, alerts right in the palm of your hand. Who's going to be here this weekend, Josh?
Josh will be
Okay,
here,
so
yeah.
Josh will be tracking that for you throughout the weekend. Obviously, Autumn's going to be tracking it for you throughout the day, along with Mary Beth. So make sure you're staying weather aware. Autumn, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
Let's talk about the debate. All eyes on Washington this morning. Do you want to stay for this conversation?
I mean, I'm comfy.
Okay,
so-
let's do it.
Actually, I didn't see the debate. Only the little snippets that we've had, because I had to try to go to sleep early. So.
Okay, well, let me break it down for you. It was not pretty. We saw epic problems for Joe Biden yesterday in terms of presentation. We heard from the experts that there was misinformation, a gross underestimation, a gross misstatement of facts. Underestimation is not a word. A gross misstatement of facts from President Trump. But for the first time, we're seeing two presidents debate each other, in Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And what we saw last night was tough for a lot of people to watch, because what we're hearing is that Biden appeared weak and Donald Trump appeared controlled. Not to say that one candidate was better than the other, but it was a matter of, this was Biden trying to assert his dominance. And a lot of people are just simply saying that didn't happen last
Not
night.
at all. That's what I was reading on socials, because I didn't watch a lot of it. I've been seeing also just the clips from it, and I was texting some of my friends. One of my friends, told me it was not a pretty performance at all from Biden whatsoever, because Trump was just able to control the stage, as you said. It wasn't necessarily more so about what they were saying. It was just the way that they were able to present themselves. Trump really took that stand.
The policy, though, is what's so interesting, though. I mean, when you can be accurate on policy, or you can have that policy discussion, that's one thing. But it's almost like that Nixon JFK debate is what I was saying this morning, where Nixon had the substance, JFK has the presentation, and you wonder, how will this be studied as we move forward as a result of whatever happens in November? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Will this be of consequence to the election? Let's go to the comments here. Marguerite says the debate was a disaster. Biden looked like he was in a trance and Trump kept lying. We are doomed. Can we have two new younger candidates? Jason says, I missed the debate. As well, the Dems had Marianne Williamson, but she dropped out. Shirley says, shame on Jill Biden for allowing her husband to be so humiliated. Katie's mom, good morning to you, MB, says one was blundering, the other was blabbing. Cindy says, yes, Biden was weak. Trump was able to control himself. It wasn't good. Kristen says, I'm for two new candidates. Barbara, good morning to you. Oh my, very difficult to watch, but I did. Nobody had presentation and one couldn't answer the questions posed to him. Sherry says Trump still has his spark. Kathy also says Trump crushed it over Biden, clearly. So let me ask you this. Does this change anything about how you are willing to vote in November? So for instance, and I just want to put it bluntly, if you're voting for Biden, does his performance change your vote in November? And I wonder, because that's the consequence, right, of this kind of a presentation moment.
That was the ultimate question, honestly, out of any coverage that was the main question that they had for viewers, for voters. I saw CNN late last night, actually. I was still up, and I saw that they brought in a whole panel of people that watched the debate, and they asked them that first off the top, like, did any of you make up your mind? And a majority of them were undecided. And I asked them, did a majority, or did any of you guys make up your mind? And a majority of them did raise their hand. They were like, yes, we made it up. So I think a lot of people did get clarification in off who they wanted to vote off this debate, just because of how stark both of the performances were compared to each other. But that's the thing, from what you see online and everything, I think a lot of people are pretty much set on who they're going to vote for the most part.
I think they need to answer the question. Then I did not watch.
That's okay.
But I think when you are posed a question, you need to answer it. You know, the economy. What really can we do about this?
Right.
What candidate can make, you know, certain changes in order for us to, I mean, I don't want to pay $7 for a bottle of mayonnaise anymore.
Right.
Like what can you do for me?
Well, and I wonder, did you see anything or hear anything in this debate from either candidate that said, you know what, that's a really great answer? Or did you hear an answer that you thought was concise enough to understand what was actually going to be done should they be reelected or frankly, reelected? Either one of them would be reelected, right?
Yeah.
Danielle says Trump did not answer the questions. Cindy says, it did change her mind. I don't know who to vote for, but Biden is too weak to carry on. My mom. I'd vote for Gladys, my dog, over both.
Somebody else said, like, Marguerite, she said, let's bring the dogs in for a better choice.
You know, it's hard because this is the state of affairs in America right now. We are a country divided. We know this. We are all having a hard time making ends meet. As you mentioned, $7 for some goods that often would have cost us $2-3 years ago. And we are suffering through this with high inflation. So what can we do to bring inflation down? The war in Ukraine was an interesting topic that was also brought up. You know, Biden was funding Zelensky is what Trump was saying. And Trump said that if he were president, none of this would have ever happened because he would have been strong. You know, it was an interesting battle, but I wonder if it was actually understood by the American people.
And that's the thing. I do not think that it really was understood.
Oh, okay.
Autumn has to move her car. Sorry to interrupt everyone. Thanks, Autumn.
Thank you, Autumn.
Okay, but continue your thought.
No, I mean, really, again, I did not watch too much of the debate, but from what I've seen, you got to pose what you said again. I already forgot because of that whole distraction.
Did we get anything out of the policy? I mean, do you think that Trump would have been strong enough to prevent the war in Ukraine? And is Biden funding it too much?
A lot of what Trump's ways of campaigning, though, is by using just strong verbiage, strong rhetoric, and just saying a lot of times what people want to hear. I mean, granted, that's what politicians do in general. They say what people want to hear, but that's what Trump really relies on is the verbiage that he uses, and all of it is just strong verbiage. So anytime he's able to put that out there in any situation, it's going to sound like he knows what he's talking about, but a lot of people just aren't convinced with it.
Jason says, I think Trump was a bit more reserved than usual, but it seemed he let Joe speak and hang himself. And, you know, there was one moment where he says to the moderators and frankly to the American people, you know, I don't really understand what he just said, and I don't even think he understands what he just said. And that was kind of like the pivotal moment for, I think, a lot of people who were watching. When you are seeing a poor performance like that, you know, you start to question. And I think that's just 100%. Natural.
Well, and it again, their age, just bottom line, that's been one of the biggest questions as well. Both of them on the stage, you're going to be questioning that as well. Like I said, I did not watch as often, but everything that I'm seeing, everybody was like, these guys are too old.
Shirley says Biden also lied. One thing that was that no military was killed during his term. What about the 13 in Afghanistan? I saw that as well. MB says Trump says he could have had the war in Ukraine finished if he's elected before he even steps into office. So between November and January. Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. How is that actually possible? Like you're not in office. You are, you know, perhaps a former statesman, but I wonder how that would actually be feasible.
Well, did they have any conversation about the Israel-Hamas war?
That was a conversation as well. Again, very scant when it comes to all of this. It was a lot of rhetoric and a lot of pointing fingers. Diane, good morning. U.S. does fund too much. We are throwing money everywhere and to anyone when the U.S. has problems here. Kathy says, I thought Trump was on point, much better behavior since the last debate. This was so embarrassing. Now, I wonder was it embarrassing for Kathy? And maybe we can share your voice a little bit further. Was it embarrassing for both candidates, or was it embarrassing for us as a country that this is kind of where we are?
I think I would say it's kind of more embarrassing as to where we are, because like you said, it's the fact it's a country divided. It's a time where we cannot have a conversation about politics whatsoever. I don't mind having conversations about politics, but it's the fact that now the conversations just don't even go from being able to actually present our points back and forth. It goes to attacking now.
Right.
So that's why it's like, now with any conversation with politics, you have to just be so careful, or people just avoid it in total.
Well, and the biggest debate was about their golf game, which was absurd. Danielle says neither one had any comments what they will do for the country in the future if elected.
And that's really what's worrisome,
Right.
if anything. If that's what people are taking away from it, then I don't see how people in general are supposed to be able to get an answer. If they're undecided, how are they supposed to get an answer if the candidates themselves aren't answering the questions that people want answers to?
So Marguerite just following up and answering my question here. She says it's embarrassing for our country. I can't wait to listen to the Italian channel to hear her comments today, is what she's saying. Parker's Pit. Hey, Parker's Pit, good morning. I hate discussing politics because people judge when they disagree. Not good for business owners to do either. It's true. People have their own opinions. People are very set in their ways. But take a look at this. And John, maybe you can go back to that graphic, because I feel like that's really important to show folks what the top issues are. The economy. 82% of people who would vote for president, according to the CBS News poll, say the economy is the top issue for them. But look at this at the bottom. More than half say abortion is a big issue. Similarly, guns and the border are big issues as well. You know, it's interesting because I feel like these numbers fluctuate. The ABC News poll that we saw recently within the last couple of days, and I don't know if it was ABC News poll, I think it was Ipsos actually. Yeah, it was an Ipsos poll. Said that inflation, immigration, political extremism, abortion, and crime and gun violence were the top 5. So you're seeing something similar here, but we're also talking about, I think, more specific things in, you know, the border, guns in particular, inflation, democracy. It all is relative, but the issues weren't necessarily hammered out last night.
Not at all. I mean, it's kind of more just an overview of what really they were talking about, but it wasn't necessarily actually getting into any type of solutions, getting into any type of possible things that they could possibly enact. It just, again, nothing went in depth. It was all just kind of surface level type responses.
Peter's just echoing your comments here, Adam, saying amen on what you said. That's why I really talk about politics, because there's a civil war among people over different candidates.
And that's the thing. I don't really think there is an issue to talk about politics in a normal everyday setting. I don't think it's an issue at all, because not everybody's going to agree with everything that you say. Everybody has their own opinion. But again, it's just ultimately now, kind of like what I was telling you yesterday, everything has turned into a moral debate at the same time. So now that's where it gets really difficult to be able to have these conversations, because it just turns into that attack mode.
And it's crazy how morality and politics have kind of intersected at this point. Yeah. Paula, good morning to you. Inflation, economy, immigration, in her opinion, are almost the same thing. Marlene says Jill Biden needs to reevaluate her priorities. Kevin says, let the facts talk. Okay. Kim says, Trump has not changed. It's all about him. And then Karen says, I knew Biden's mental competency was bad, but not this bad. So I was watching the ABC News coverage this morning, and they were talking about conversations internally within the Democratic campaign, the Democratic machine, and the Biden campaign. You know, John Karl, who's a political correspondent and has been for many years, talked about the idea of how much of a disaster this was for Biden and what could become of his candidacy. And one of the things he said is that, you know, this could come down to a personal decision of Biden to potentially step out. You know, the convention hasn't happened, but could there be another candidate to step in on behalf of the Democrats? Because it sounds like there's panic behind the scenes.
That was one conversation that we had last night at my little going away thing. We were talking about it. We all tuned into the debate just for a little bit. And our Michael Wooten, he mentioned that. He's like, that's kind of where the conversation may go, is that, like, hey, for him, because why did he do the debate this early? This is the earliest that they've ever had a debate. So now that conversation kind of comes into question, like, okay, is this kind of his way of trying to get out of the race, or what is going to happen? Obviously, we don't know. That's all stuff that's going to be answered later on, but it is a good point to bring up.
So Williams says, party lines aside, there's no better impressive candidates out there than what we see. It's a sad state of affairs. I'm always hopeful, but this looks dismal. Interesting comment from Mark. The media has betrayed our country and has lied for almost 4 years. So I wonder, Mark, dig into this a little bit. What do you believe that the media has actually lied about? And we were having this conversation similarly yesterday, about the media, because it was a CNN debate, yet it was broadcast across the country and around the world on all different networks. So sure it was,
Fox.
sure it was CNN broadcasting this and moderating this. It'll be ABC in September with David Muir and Lindsay Davis. But I wonder what you think the media has lied about for 4 years. Ashley says, respectfully, there is no good choice, and this is a direct reflection of how serious we have chosen to take voting and upholding specific party positions in times outside of election seasons. Get to know your neighbors, and let's learn to work together.
I like that.
Isn't that true? This is a matter of now coming together as community. We have to take it upon ourselves, is what Ashley is saying, to go out and meet one another, understand the issues, and start boosting up our own, perhaps, local candidates to take on those positions. And all politics are local.
Yeah.
We talked about this yesterday as well. Tim Kennedy is going to be on the election again in November for the 26th district, the congressional district that was once represented by Brian Higgins. So what will happen there?
We will have to see.
Lori says there's another candidate, Robert Kennedy. Kim says, as confusing Biden was, he answered questions. Shirley says, I thought the moderators were fair. Audrey says, what women's rights did Trump take away? She questions. And then Barbara says, well said, Ashley. Lynn says, I was really disappointed by how last night's debate went. I'm feeling just really fearful about potentially losing more rights as a woman. Now, Lynn, maybe you can dig in a little bit for us. What rights are you concerned about? I mean, Roe v. Wade was overturned. Biden says he would reinstate it. Trump said that he was thrilled to give it back to the states.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people, like, from what I've seen on socials, all of this from what I'm seeing is on social. I mean, Twitter, all of these places are great to see what people are thinking about. And everybody's been saying, Biden's like, oh, if I'm reelected, I'll reinstate it. I'm like, a lot of people are saying, you're in office now. Why? Or that's something that you had said in your first campaign when you were trying to be president. Why isn't this something, and they're codifying it? Why isn't that something that you took priority? And
so Linda is kind of echoing what I'm saying here. No president does anything by himself without Congress. It's going to be one fight after another again. And that's why I'm saying that, like, all politics are local. So it's the people that we are electing in addition to
what's
the
happening.
person at the top.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting. Sarah says Trump talked 3 times about late-term abortions, and he mentioned at 8-9 months, pregnant, and even after birth. He is so unserious. Andrea says, I will vote for Trump. No way I can vote for Biden. Bob says, what's the baby's right to life? Abortion from a Christian standpoint is murder. And that's the viewpoint of a lot of people. The other viewpoint is that there should be a woman's right to choose.
Yeah, because of medical reasons, whatever reasons it may be. But that's been the biggest argument too, is the fact, because of the medical side of it, that people need to have the chance to choose.
So, he gave it, Trump, vis-a-vis the Supreme Court, gave it back to the states. And Biden, as I mentioned, said that he will reenact it, Roe v. Wade, should he be reelected. So it would be interesting to see how he would be able to do that, given the Supreme Court precedent at this point. Sherry says Trump hires the best of the best. That's why we were in a better spot financially. And then Linda, good morning to you. How can anyone vote for Biden? His family should be ashamed of themselves for even letting him go on stage. And then Jason says, abortion is not murder. It's a woman's right to choose. Politics is a bad subject, is what Lori says.
Everyone has their own opinion.
Right, but that's honestly, that's why we wanted to have this conversation with you. And I'm thrilled that we can have this in a civilized manner. Realistically, it all comes down to how you vote, or what you vote for in November. And look, we're getting an early look
at what could possibly happen.
Exactly.
So.
Thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate that. Also, quickly want to mention today is Adam's last day. So want to wish you well. Final thoughts here.
Ed, that's one thing I wanted to say. I wanted to say in order to, it has been an absolute pleasure sharing the air with you and Katie every morning. You guys are true vets, and I learned so much from you both, seeing how you guys approach your stories, approach going on television every day, and approach journalism. I mean, it's a true way that I want to continue to carry on in my career. So I appreciate you guys. And then, of course, everybody behind the scenes, they all played a vital role in allowing me this opportunity to be able to head back home. And of course, to the Cuppies, it was great. Every morning, whether it was coming on to the desk, being able to spend a little bit of my morning with you guys, we appreciate all the support, appreciate all the love that you guys have shown me since I announced that I was heading out. And I appreciate all the love right here in the comments. So thank you, Western New York.
Have a great weekend.